Hey everyone, this is Erica Seba. Welcome to another episode of Mind Bit. Hey everybody, I hope you are well. So today is the day I am doing part 2 of my top 10 JRPGs on the PlayStation 2. This is the finale of all finales. The PlayStation 2 has been and was an amazing console in terms of JRPGs. Of course, you could say the PlayStation 1 won in that accord, and yes, I think it did, but I think the PlayStation 2 is another amazing example of the collection, just the genre itself. It really, it brought a lot of amazing games to the table, and it made it very hard for me to pick my top 10. Now, I'm really glad that you enjoyed part 1 of my top 10 JRPGs on the PlayStation 2, and I was really happy to hear about all of your favorites. To be honest, they reminded me of games I haven't played in ages, or games I've never played in my life. So you guys gave me a lot of reasons to pick up more of these games, and I really appreciate that very much. Now, in my last 5 and my final 5 for the top JRPGs, I am also going to be doing an honorable mention because there are a lot of games that I had to drop. Games that you might or might not be surprised to see or not see. I think that there will be at least one surprise in this list, but there might be games that you're like, why wasn't this included, right? So, and I have my reasons. I'm not going to go in depth, but I am going to spew out some of those games, and games that you definitely should check out even if they're not part of the list, because they're still really important. It's just, I'm coming up with this list. I gotta find the best in my opinion. So let's get right to it. So number 5 in my top 10 JRPGs on the PlayStation 2 goes out to Rogue Galaxy. This is an awesome game, also by Level 5. As you might have remembered in my last video, I do love Level 5 very much, and I loved what they did with Dragon Quest VIII. Now, they do not skimp on the difficulty, and I think that's what I enjoy most about these guys. They know how to make a challenging game, and I think Rogue Galaxy was a really great example of challenge, yet still being very accessible to a wide variety of people. The combat system was really fun and very accessible. The characters were extremely engaging, in my opinion. I thought that they were very unique representations of, your generic JRPG characters. Sure, they did cover some archetypes, but at the same time, they didn't. There are certain games that I really enjoy because they break certain molds, or they break what you might expect to be a typical protagonist. And games like Skies of Arcadia, I think, is a really great example of that, and it kind of reminds me a bit of Rogue Galaxy in that way. Rogue Galaxy is just plain fun. Like I said before, the combat system, the skill system, everything about it is fun. It does get a bit on the repetitive side, I will admit, and that's kind of why it is where it is on the list. But in terms of the unique cel-shaded graphics, the vast world, planets that you can explore, the kinds of missions you can go on, the story itself, it's so whimsical and otherworldly. You feel like you're going on a big adventure with everybody, and it's luckily it's a fun team of people you're with as well. So I was really lucky to be able to get the official strategy guide for that game too, and I think I got that for like $5. It's like this giant guide because there's just so much you can do in the game, so many cool stuff. So I definitely recommend checking it out if you are looking for just a really fun JRPG to play. If you're looking for something accessible with a pretty fast-paced battle system to it, I really enjoy it a lot, and I think you'll love it too. Number 4 of my top 10 JRPGs on the PlayStation 2 goes out to Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne. Yes! Yes! No, Shin Megami Tensei games are always going to end up on this list because they are just so good. They are so good, and they do all follow a very common theme in the sense that they delve into a different side of JRPGs, and they are extremely dark in scope, and they're a breath of fresh air in a way. And you would think that because there's so many Shin Megami Tensei games that after a while it would get bland, because you're exploring the same sort of themes, but it doesn't, and Nocturne is another really great example of that, just like for Digital Devil Saga. They all have their own spin, right? All of these games have their own spin, and they all have their own vibes, even if they're all very similar vibes, and Nocturne was just that. So not only do you get a really cool vibe from the game, not only do you get pretty cool premise, just in general. Really dark, supernatural premise. You also get some really cool graphics with it too, and you get this unforgiving gameplay that you may or may not love. So, kind of why it's number 4, but there's just something really great about it. And as a standalone Shin Megami Tensei game, it's pretty badass. And it has some really cool art, and oh my god, I totally forgot about this. Yeah, it features Dante from Devil May Cry. That's so crazy. I totally forgot about this. Anyways, though, like, it's really cool. It's a really cool series. If you are looking for something just much darker in JRPGs, really a breath of fresh air. Very challenging, so not the most accessible game. It's not geared for everybody by any means, but just like all the past Shin Megami Tensei games, it's a strong one. It is a very strong one. Not all these games are very strong. Not all these games are worth mentioning, but this one is probably one of the top ones, and it's one that you'll definitely be seeing on people's lists if they have covered a wide variety of JRPGs, right? If you haven't, I highly recommend it. I highly recommend at least giving it a shot. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but if you can look past that, if you can get into its gripping story and premise and concept, the atmosphere itself is what grows and what lingers on inside of you, then this is definitely one to check out. Now, number 3 on my top 10 JRPGs on the PlayStation 2 goes out to Tales of the Abyss. Yes, I finally have a Tales game on this list, so I don't really play a lot of Tales games because my experience with the Tales series didn't start until a little bit later. It wasn't like the Final Fantasy series where I started fairly young. I actually wasn't a big fan of action JRPGs for a while, and Kingdom Hearts didn't really exactly help my how I felt about the genre itself. I was much more into turn-based growing up, but I think that Tales of the Abyss was one of those examples that really helped me get into it, just like Tales of Symphonia did as well. Now, unfortunately, this is another one of those games that I do not own. I borrowed it from a friend and I got to really appreciate it, but these games, like I said, I didn't get to appreciate until I was a bit older, right? So luckily I do have Tales of the Abyss on the 3DS. Keep in mind, do not play this on 3D because it sucks, but the game is still good, and this is honestly the only version I have of it, unfortunately, but I will pick it up soon. This is one of those games where you might not like it at first. It's, but you know, looks can be deceiving. Looks can be very, very deceiving. So, Luke is an idiot. Luke is the biggest moron ever, and he's just annoying as hell. He's your protagonist if you're not familiar with the game. He's not very likable at first, but what makes the game so engaging is the fact that he changes so much. The character progression itself is what really won it for me. That's really what happened. And what I like so much about the Tales series is it focuses so much on character progression and character development. It's very different, I feel, from other JRPG series in that, like, each series, like each franchise or whatever, they tend to focus on different aspects, and there's different things about them that you typically will end up loving. And what I love about the Tales series is its character progression. I like the fantastical stories too, yet they're still very grounded at the same time, and that's another thing I really like about Tales of the Abyss and any of these Tales games is how grounded they are, yet how fantastical they are at the same time. So you also have amazing characters like Tyr. She is like one of my favorite female characters ever. She's so strong-willed, and she's just like, and I don't just like strong-willed characters. Like, I just like her progression. I like her personality. I like so much about her, right? So, in combination with characters like Luke who do get better as the story goes, it's awesome. It's awesome. And these characters have really great chemistry. You could say characters from like Tales of Vesperia have better chemistry, but I think that Abyss had some really amazing character chemistry, and the battle system, you know, at the time it was really great. Now you would consider it kind of slow in Tales wise, right? Like the best Tales combat system by far is Grace's F in my opinion, and I think the most accessible would be Xillia at this point, or Exilia. But there's something about Tales of the Abyss that a lot of people tend to overlook, and I feel it's a game that people definitely need to try more of if you're not familiar with the Tales series, or if you're not really sure where to start. I would say Symphonia or Abyss. Most certainly, in, you know, like for story, for character progression, for just the atmosphere. I highly recommend it if you haven't tried it out already. Number 2 on my top 10 JRPGs on the PlayStation 2 goes out to Final Fantasy X. Now you guys know this is one of my favorite games if you watch my top Final Fantasy games video, and this is one of those games where I really got into the atmosphere. Like, this is such an atmospheric game, and it was so unlike anything I had experienced thus far, aside from Final Fantasy VII, I suppose. And I guess Final Fantasy VIII was kind of weird because it was like realistic in a way. But this one felt so familiar, even like when I first started playing it. Like, there was something about it that just grabbed me. It could have been like the lush graphics maybe, or it could have just been like the interesting character chemistry. I found it very interesting, and yeah, maybe they did cover different archetypes, but they were very natural in certain respects. Particularly, I really liked the relationship between Tidus and Yuna. I liked how they worked off of each other, and they were actually very different characters, and they had very different temperaments, yet they were able to bring out so much warmth from each other, you know, like, I thought it was really great. There were definitely characters that were underrepresented, like Kamari. Kamari was a bit underrepresented, but he did get his moment, and I think every single character in Final Fantasy X did at least get their moment. Auron got probably one of the best moments. He got one of the best moments, and he's a total badass for a reason, right? If he starred in the game, it would have been a totally different game, though. I like Tidus. I like how he's a fish out of water, quite literally, you know? Like, he doesn't exactly know what's going on, and he's really, you can really put yourself in his perspective, despite the fact that some people think he's really annoying, right? Like, you never even hear his name in the game. Like, it's trying to set it in a fashion where, like, you feel like you are in the game, and I really like how Final Fantasy did that. So yes, this is a very linear Final Fantasy in comparison to some of the other ones, and yeah, I mean, that's probably one of the biggest gripes I have about it, is the fact that it just led you on. Like, there wasn't a lot of points where you could, you know, sidetrack on something else, right? Like, you could go and do a lot of things. You could get more Aeons, which I loved getting. I loved the Aeons. I liked Anima and getting the Magus sisters, and they were so cool. So many cool moments, right? But I think that despite that fault, I think it was a really, really great game, and I liked the journey, and I liked where it was leading me. I really enjoyed that a lot. I don't like it when I'm given too much freedom in terms of where I can go, but I like it when it gives me a little bit of leeway. This one didn't exactly do that, but it had other ways of, you know, complementing the positive aspects of it. So if you haven't checked it out, where have you been? Where have you been? And if you don't like the game, honestly, maybe give it another shot. You know, there is the HD remaster that came out. Maybe try it again. At least give it a shot and get to experience the awesomeness. And my number one JRPG on the PlayStation 2 is Persona 4. This, yeah, I know some of you must have already called this one, but they're like, come on, where could it be on your list? You obviously love it a lot, and I really do love it a lot. It's very different in comparison to games like Persona 3, which was in my number 6 spot. Personally, Persona 3 had a really cool story. It was very dark. And this one isn't nearly as dark, but it implemented different things and it optimized different aspects of Persona 3 that just didn't work, right? It didn't work. Like, the battles in general are much more fun. I think it's a lot more fun just going into battles themselves. I found it kind of tedious and just not very enjoyable, and it felt more of a hassle in Persona 3. But in Persona 4, every single aspect of this game is actually fun. Despite the fact that there is a lot of challenge, just like any other Shin Megami Tensei game, you're gonna get a lot of challenge. There's also a lot of different options for you to really, like, just have a good time with it. Like, you're gonna enjoy fusing your persona. You're gonna enjoy just traveling through dungeons and things like that. You're gonna enjoy the characters. There are certain aspects of characters you might enjoy more than others. However, they're all really great and they all have redeeming qualities. I think that the simulator aspects of the game were really great, and it gave you a lot of time to do anything you wanted to do in the day. Sure, there is some time management involved. However, it gave you a lot of freedom in terms of what you could and couldn't do. Now, if you don't have a guide for this game, I have a guide because, you know, for multiple playthroughs, I want to get as much as I can. But I would highly recommend when you're playing this game for the first time, do not use a guide. Do not use a guide, and yes, it sucks when you play through the game and then you find out you miss stuff by the end and you don't get the true ending or whatever, you know, all these things. But it's your experience, and there's so many choices that you're you're able to make on your own accord, right? So you have all these choices that you can make, and it's like, well, why not? You know, why not just do what you would personally do without having to worry about, well, I want to get with this character or this character. Just do what feels best for you, and you might be pleasantly surprised. Now, if you are a total completionist and you want to get the best persona out there, then definitely use a guide, definitely. Or if you want to get all, you know, the quests and everything like that, most certainly, most certainly. But for the first playthrough, you definitely want to just experience it for what it is and enjoy the atmosphere, because it's so real. It's so, like, it's even trendier in my opinion than Persona 3, because it's cool and it's more lighthearted. It's a really great game if you haven't tried it out. There's a lot of people who say it's an amazing game, and for a good reason, and it's no wonder they came out with Persona 4 Golden. If I could put that on my list right now, I would, because it is the definitive version of the game. However, this is what started it. You know, this is where it began for us here. So it's definitely a game you need to check out for yourself. Even if you've never really played a JRPG, at least, like, try it, you know? Like, you got to experience it for yourself. Now, of course, there were a lot of games I didn't get to mention, but I did want to leave some honorable mentions for a lot of different really cool games that just unfortunately did not make it for me, but might have made it for you. Some of those games I would say would be definitely games like Suikoden 3, which I've been spending more time with. I just got that one recently. I had like a demo disc of it, but I just never really played enough of it. I haven't really gotten into the Suikoden series as much as some of you have, and it's something that I know I've seen you guys address a lot, and I definitely want to get into it more. I just didn't really grow up with it, right? So it's something that that's definitely on the back burner for me, but Suikoden 3 so far has been an amazing game. Another one I want to say is Xenosaga, particularly episode 1. Now, unfortunately, just like Xenogears, Xenosaga, it didn't end up becoming what it was supposed to be, right? It only ended up being 3 parts. It's supposed to be several more parts than that, and it felt rushed at the end. It's a game that I beat and I loved, but it missed something for me, whether it's that emotional element or whatever it was, right? There was something about it that I couldn't connect with it in the way that maybe some of you have, right? Another one is Final Fantasy XII. That's a game that I can't decide whether I love it or hate it, because there are certain aspects I love. I love the world. I loved Ivalice. I loved how it was just so vast. It was so vast, and there were so many different kinds of races involved, and you really felt like you were in a fantasy world full of these different races. I also liked I liked the hunts, but I felt like it went too in depth with the quests to a point where you could just leave the story. And the fact that the story is already kind of bland and our protagonist is kind of bland, honestly, this should have been Belthier's story. We all know that. This should have been Belthier's story. I think we would have enjoyed it a lot more if it was, because he was awesome. Everybody knows that. And if you don't, you need to see it for yourself. Belthier and Fran, they would have made the best combination. They should have their own game somewhere out there. But yeah, no, it's just the story was really bland. And there was a point in the middle where just like, it just all fell apart for me. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Let's see, there's Disgaea as well. If you're big into tactical JRPGs, strategy RPGs, and you want something where you can grind like crazy, then I would recommend it. But if you like strategy RPGs, you gotta be ready for this one. Like, this is one that's like, it's gonna take a lot of your time, and you're gonna be grinding a lot. Like, grind fests to the max with that one. Let's see, what else do I have here? I guess, I don't know if I want to call Odin Sphere one. I really like Odin Sphere a lot, but can I call it an action RPG? Maybe? I don't know. It had a really amazing visual style to it. You could say the same for games like Dragon's Crown as well. It had a leveling system to it. Kind of reminded me of the Dungeons and Dragons brawlers that came out and then were re-released I think like a year ago or so. Kind of reminded me a bit of that while still having more RPG elements to it. It had a great sense of storytelling in it, very unique. I really like Vanillaware a lot, so if I can consider that, I would consider that as well. What else? I've always wanted to play the Tonelico games. They're kind of strange to me, but if you guys can convince me into that, I may check it out. I may check it out. Another one, Atelier Iris. You know, those are games that I talked about in my my Atelier review for Eska and Logi, where I haven't really experienced them, so I can't really say, but I've heard really great things, so I mean, that might be worth checking out. We also have Tales of Legendia, which I haven't played, but some of you guys really love, and I don't know, you know, I don't know, I've heard mixed things about that one, right? So, oh, Shadow Hearts is another one that I've only spent a little bit of time with, but I do want to give a shout out to because it has such dark themes in it as well, and it just seems really cool, so maybe that's worth checking out for you as well. I want to say Okami so bad, even though it's not one. I'm just like looking at my collection right now because I can't remember anymore for the life of me. So I guess I'm gonna stick with that for now. Oh yeah, Breath of Fire Dragon's Quarter. I actually really like that. I know some of you might not like that very much because it really was a change of pace, but I played a bit of that and I really enjoyed that a lot. So there's a lot of games, obviously, and there's a lot that I've missed out on, or games that I might have forgotten right now, so please refresh my memory. And I'm sorry that there were certain games that might not have been on the list that you were hoping for, but this is my list. This is my list. And if you haven't already given me your last 5, your final 5, then please do tell me. I'm very curious. So I hope you enjoyed my top 10 JRPGs on the PlayStation 2. I hope you tune in again soon for another video. I got lots in store for all of you. So I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll talk to you later. All right.